The smell of lentil soup hung heavy in the air, warm and familiar, the kind of smell that once meant safety. Once meant home. She stirred it slowly, careful not to let it boil over. Careful had become her nature. Careful with words, careful with footsteps, careful with her breathing, so no one could say she was too loud, too needy, too much. This was not her house, they reminded her often, yet every corner of it carried her fingerprints, the curtains she had sewn late at night when her eyes burned, the chipped plates she had bought years ago when money was tight, but love was plenty, the son sitting at the dining table. He was her greatest creation. Or so she used to believe. "Ma, dinner," her son called out, not bothering to look up from his phone. She wiped her hands on the edge of her faded sari and carried the pot to the table. Her knees ached today. The doctor said arthritis, age, wear and tear. She smiled through it. Smiling was easier than explaining pain to people who no longer listened. His wife sat across from him, perfectly composed, her hair neatly tied, her lips pressed into a thin line that never bent into warmth around her. She scrolled through something on her phone, then placed it face down, as if preparing for business. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The clinking of spoons sounded louder than it should have. Then it came. "Ma," her son said, finally lifting his eyes. There was impatience there, annoyance, not even a hint of the boy who once cried when she cut her finger chopping onions. "You need to understand something." Her spoon paused midair. "You live in my house for free." The words hit the table before her spoon did. For a moment she thought she had misheard him, that maybe age had finally dulled her hearing the way it had dulled her hands. "For free," she repeated softly. "Yes," he continued, louder now, as if volume would make it truer. "This place isn't cheap. Expenses are high. Electricity, groceries, water, everything costs money." She looked at her bowl. The soup rippled slightly. Her reflection trembled in it. "I raised you here," she said gently, not accusing. "Just stating a memory. That was your responsibility." His wife interjected smoothly, without looking at her. "Parents are supposed to do that." Her son nodded. "Exactly. And now you're retired. You have a pension." She felt her chest tighten. Her pension, the small amount she had earned after decades of service, saving every coin, skipping meals, so her son could have new shoes for school. "Half of your pension will cover the rent," he said. "Half," the word echoed. She looked up at him then. Really looked. His face was familiar but distant, like a place she used to live in, but no longer recognized. She searched for hesitation, for shame, for love. There was none. His wife nodded silently, satisfied, as if a long, discussed decision had finally been executed. The room felt smaller, the walls closed in, pressing against her ribs. She thought of nights spent awake, nursing him through fever, of selling her wedding bangles to pay his college fees, of skipping her own meals so he could eat twice. She thought of the house she once lived in, the one she sold, so he could buy this one. Her house, she smiled. It surprised even her. "All right," she said calmly. Both of them blinked. "I'll give half my pension," she continued, her voice steady, polite. "If that is what you want." Her son relaxed visibly, as if expecting resistance and bracing for a fight. His wife picked up her phone again, already bored. The conversation was over for them. She stood up slowly, pushing her chair back. Her joints protested, but she ignored them. As she walked toward her small room at the end of the hall, memories followed her like shadows. The room was barely big enough for a bed, a cupboard, and her prayers. Once she had the master bedroom. Once this house had been hers in spirit, if not on paper. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it. Her smile faded, her hands trembled, not with weakness, but with something sharper, clearer. Pain had finally burned through illusion. She had mistaken endurance for love, sacrifice for gratitude, and now she understood. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the old cloth bag tucked under it. Inside were documents, letters, receipts, things no one had bothered to ask about in years. They thought she was helpless. They thought she was afraid. They thought she had nowhere to go. She let out a slow breath and straightened her back. No, she whispered to the empty room, not helpless. She stood up again, this time without hesitation. Her voice, though quiet, carried certainty as she spoke to herself. Asterisk, asterisk, the plan begins, now. Asterisk, asterisk, morning came quietly, the way it always did. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of her small room. Brushing the edges of the bed she rose from before anyone else in the house stirred. She washed her face, tied her hair back neatly, and looked at herself in the cracked mirror. The woman staring back looked old, yes, but not broken. At the breakfast table she was silent. That silence pleased them. Her son barely acknowledged her presence as he rushed to work. His wife spoke only when necessary, her words clipped and transactional. "Don't forget," she said, sipping her tea, "the pension transfer should start this month. I know." The mother replied calmly, no argument, no questions. They exchanged a glance, relief mixed with contempt. She could see it clearly now. Silence to them meant submission. They were wrong. Each month, half her pension left her account, just as promised. She never complained. She even thanked them once, softly, for letting her stay. That gratitude sealed their certainty. Asterisk, she's harmless. Asterisk, but what they didn't see were the hours she spent alone, thinking. Listening, learning, she noticed how her daughter-in-law spoke on the phone late at night, whispering about investments and loans. She memorized numbers, names, fragments of conversations. She noted how her son never checked the mail, never bothered with paperwork unless it came with urgency or threat. She always had. One afternoon, she visited the old bank branch 3 streets away, the one she had trusted for decades. The clerk recognized her immediately. "You look well." The young woman said kindly, "I am," she replied. And for the first time, it wasn't a lie. She reviewed her accounts, her savings, old fixed deposits her son had forgotten about. Funds she had tucked away years ago just in case. Just in case had arrived. She met an old friend for tea, another widow. Another woman's society had dismissed as finished. They laughed quietly, sharing stories of children who had grown distant, of lives spent giving. "You were always smart," her friend said. "Too smart to be this small." That night, the words echoed in her mind. Too smart to be this small. She began to walk differently, her steps firmer, her shoulders straighter. The house hadn't changed, but she had. She no longer rushed to serve, no longer apologized for resting. She cooked enough, not extra. She cleaned her room, not the whole house. Her daughter-in-law noticed first. "You seem different," she said one evening, eyes narrowed. "Age does that." The mother replied with a gentle smile. But her son noticed too, noticed how she no longer hovered, no longer sought approval, no longer waited. And it unsettled him. One evening he found her sitting on the balcony, reading papers instead of watching television. "What are those?" he asked. "Old things," she said, folding them carefully. "Things I should have looked at earlier." He shrugged it off. They always did. Late at night she opened her cloth bag again. Documents lay neatly stacked now. Property records. Bank statements, letters written in her own careful handwriting years ago. When she had planned for a future she never thought she'd need. Her future, she touched the papers with reverence, not greed, not anger, resolve. They had mistaken her silence for weakness, her patience for dependence, her kindness for foolishness. She turned off the light and lay down, heart steady, mind clear. In the darkness she allowed herself a small, knowing smile. They had taken her for granted for too long. Soon they would learn what happens when a woman who has nothing left to lose finally remembers her worth. There was a time when she waited for her son to ask if she had eaten, waited for her daughter-in-law to speak kindly, waited for gratitude that never arrived. That time was over. The change did not come with anger or shouting. It came quietly, like the moment winter finally accepts that spring has won. She stopped trying. No more gentle reminders. No more explanations. No more bending herself into shapes that made others comfortable. One morning, her daughter-in-law pushed a stack of clothes toward her. "These need ironing." She looked at the pile, then at the woman standing in front of her. "I won't be able to do that today," she said calmly. "Why not?" the woman snapped. "I have an appointment." That was all. No apology followed. No justification. Just a fact. Her son watched the exchange, confused. His mother had never refused before. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it again. Something about her eyes stopped him. They were not tired anymore. They were finished. Her days began to fill, slowly, deliberately. She attended community meetings. She visited the legal aid office, recommended by an old colleague. She listened more than she spoke, asked questions without revealing answers. At the lawyer's office, the man adjusted his glasses and reread the documents she laid out carefully on the desk. "You were very thorough," he said. She smiled faintly. "I had to be. What you have here," he continued, tapping the papers, "gives you more control than you realize." Control. The word warmed her chest in a way nothing had in years. She went home that evening lighter, straighter. Her son noticed. "You've been out a lot," he said casually, but his tone carried suspicion now. "Yes," she replied. "I enjoy walking." That night, he argued with his wife behind closed doors. Voices were hushed but sharp. She heard her name more than once. "She's changing." The wife said, "Watch her, watch her." The thought almost made her laugh. Days passed, then weeks. Her pension money continued to leave her account, but it no longer frightened her. She had learned how to make money grow quietly, patiently, just as she had once raised a child. One evening, her son came home agitated. "Ma," he said, forcing a smile, "if you need anything, you can tell us." She looked at him for a long moment. A real look, the kind that strips away excuses. "I needed you," she said softly, "a long time ago." The silence between them was unbearable. He looked away. From that day on, she stopped seeking their approval altogether. She ate when she was hungry, rested when she was tired, spoke only when her words mattered. She reclaimed small things first, her mornings, her dignity, her voice, and in reclaiming them, she reclaimed herself. Late one night, she opened her bag again, not to count, not to worry, but to prepare. Everything was in order now. She placed the documents back carefully, hands steady, heart calm. A mother could beg. A woman could endure. But once she stopped begging, she became unstoppable. The day everything changed did not arrive with thunder or shouting. It arrived quietly, on a Tuesday afternoon. Her son and daughter-in-law sat at the dining table, papers spread between them, frustration sharp in the air. The bank letter lay open, its words unforgiving, rejected, frozen, under review. "What do you mean asterisk? It's not valid asterisk." Her son snapped into the phone. "The house is in my name." Her daughter-in-law paced behind him, heels clicking like a countdown. From the doorway, the mother watched. Not hiding, not interfering, just present. When the call ended, her son noticed her standing there. "Ma," he said sharply, "did you do something?" She walked to the table slowly and sat down. "Yes," she said. The word landed softly, but it shook them. She reached into her cloth bag, the same one they had ignored for years, and placed the documents neatly on the table. Her hands did not tremble. "This house," she said calmly, "was bought with the money from the house I sold, the house your father left me." Her daughter-in-law scoffed. "So you asterisk gave asterisk it to us." "I helped you," the mother corrected gently. "I did not disappear." Her son flipped through the papers, color draining from his face. Legal stamps, dates, signatures. The ownership was conditional. She continued, "I retained rights, rights you never asked about." The silence was deafening. "You charged me rent," she said, meeting her son's eyes, "in the house built from my sacrifice." He opened his mouth, closed it again. "For months you took half my pension." She went on, "I let you." Her daughter-in-law finally snapped. "So what is this? Blackmail?" The mother smiled, not cruelly, not triumphantly, but peacefully. "No," she said. "This is closure." She slid one final paper across the table. A notice. "I am leaving." she said, "and the pension payments stop today. You can't just—" Her son started. "I already have," she replied. She stood up, shoulders straight, voice steady. "I raised you to be strong," she said to her son. "I did not raise you to forget where you came from." His eyes filled with something too late to be regret. She walked to her room for the last time, packed only what mattered. Memories stayed behind. She no longer needed proof of them. At the door she turned back. "I forgive you," she said softly, "but I will not stay where I am treated as a burden." Then she left. No shouting, no curses, no revenge soaked in cruelty, only dignity. Weeks later, she sat in her own small apartment, sunlight warming her face. Plants by the window, silence that felt like peace. She smiled not because she had won, but because she had finally chosen herself. And that, she knew, was the sweetest revenge of all.